Tombstone, Arizona. You hear that name, you think gunfights, saloons, right? Wild West through and through. But, and here's the thing, how much do we really know about Tombstone? I mean, beyond those iconic images, get ready, because today's deep dive, we're going beyond the surface, uncovering the hidden stories, the surprising contrasts that make Tombstone much more than just a dusty legend.
It really is remarkable when you think about it. Tombstone's story, it's almost Shakespearean in a way. This incredible rise, this boom, but
I don't know,
then...
fall from grace.
Oh, absolutely. But even more than that, it's the extremes that get you. Tombstone wasn't content to just exist, you know? It lived large, it flamed out hard, and it left this legacy that, well, we're still talking about it, aren't we?
That's what we're here for. And to kick things off, that boom, that explosion onto the scene, it's almost impossible to overstate how quickly it all happened. We're talking about a town that went from a handful of prospectors to a full-blown silver boom practically overnight.
And that's no exaggeration. When we talk about a boom, we really mean it. Imagine, you're Ed Shylin, this prospector, and folks, they're warning you. You're going to find nothing but your tombstone out there, they say.
Little did they know.
Right. He strikes silver. And not just a little vein either. This was the mother lode. Assays at the time, they showed a staggering amount of silver per ton of ore. $15,000. And if that wasn't enough, throw in another $1,500 in gold on top of that. Can you imagine? That $15,000 back then, it'd be worth calculate modern equivalent today. It's no wonder folks lost their minds rushing to get a piece of that action.
So word gets out. Silver like that, it doesn't stay secret for long.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've got yourself a bona fide boomtown on your hands.
A town practically bursting at the seams. Within just a couple of years, Tombstone was a whirlwind. And it wasn't just your typical Wild West scene either. Sure, you had your saloons, your gambling halls, all that. But we're talking count 'em, two ice companies in the middle of the desert. And if that doesn't scream luxury, get this. 3 separate water companies supplying the town.
Water, ice. Sounds almost civilized.
They were aiming high. They even had fresh seafood shipped in daily all the way from Mexico.
Hold on, fresh seafood. In the Arizona territory, that's a level of sophistication I wasn't expecting.
And that's what makes Tombstone so fascinating. This wasn't some haphazard frontier outpost. It was a testament to the ambition, the aspiration of the people who flocked there. They wanted it all the finer things, even in the untamed West. Think about it. You're a prospector, you've been out in the elements for months. Wouldn't a taste of home, a little bit of luxury make all the difference?
It's like they were trying to rebuild New York City in the middle of the desert. The sheer audacity is remarkable, but, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but all good things, they do come to an end, even boomtowns.
Ah, you're right about that. Even the richest silver vein eventually runs dry. And for Tombstone, the downturn, well, it hit hard. I've got to remember those fires, 1881, 1882, absolutely devastating. And as if that wasn't enough, by 1890, those once overflowing silver veins, they were drying up faster than a puddle in a desert windstorm.
So the silver's disappearing, the boom times are fading. What happens to a town like Tombstone when the bottom falls out? That's what we're about to find out as we dig deeper into this Wild West paradox. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? One day you're living the high life, striking silver, the next.
The well runs dry. And that's the thing about boomtowns, that sudden wealth, it attracts a certain kind of person.
Someone looking for a fast fortune.
Exactly. And when the silver started to disappear, well, so did those folks. But here's the thing about Tombstone. It wasn't just another flash in the pan.
It had staying power.
It did. There's a certain grit you find in Tombstone's history. The people who stayed, they weren't the type to just pack up and leave when things got tough.
They were in it for the long haul.
Absolutely. But that same grit, that determination, it also fed into the, let's say, livelier aspects of Tombstone's reputation.
You're talking about the gunfights, the OK Corral.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to talk about Tombstone without mentioning it.
Right. It's become legendary. Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, the Clanton gang. It's like a scene straight out of a movie. But there's more to it than just the gun smoke. Did you know that entire shootout, it lasted about 30 seconds?
30 seconds. That's it.
That's all it took. That's the Wild West for you. But even in those 30 seconds, you see this microcosm of the tensions brewing in Tombstone. On the one hand, you've got the Earps trying to bring law and order to this wild town.
Or at least their version of it.
Exactly. And on the other side, you have the cowboys, representing this untamed spirit, this resistance to authority. It's a classic showdown.
So the gunfight at the OK Corral, It wasn't just a drunken brawl.
Not at all. It was symbolic of this larger struggle, this clash between civilization and the Wild West mentality. And it reminds us that life back then, it could change in an instant. One minute you're walking down the street, the next, well, you get the idea.
It makes you realize how fragile things were. But life in Tombstone, it wasn't all shootouts and showdowns.
Oh, definitely not. People needed their entertainment, their distractions. And that's where the Birdcage Theater comes in.
Ah, the birdcage. Now there's a place with stories to tell.
It was the heart of Tombstone's entertainment scene. Saloons, gambling dens, dance halls, the Birdcage had it all. But the real claim to fame, it was home to the longest poker game in history.
8 years. Can you imagine? 8 years sitting at the same table.
It boggles the mind. What kept them going all those years? The cards, the whiskey, the company.
The stories those walls could tell. What kind of person plays poker for 8 years straight?
That's the question, isn't it? But maybe that's the kind of person Tombstone attracted, those larger-than-life characters willing to gamble on anything.
8 years. It's hard to wrap your head around. Just sitting there year after year, the stakes, the stories. What a scene that must have been.
Oh, absolutely. Makes you wonder what those folks would say if those walls could talk.
And it makes you realize, even with all the chaos, all the ups and downs, Tombstone had this strange staying power. It didn't just fade away like some other boomtowns.
It's true. Even when the silver ran dry, even after those devastating fires, Tombstone it refused to disappear.
And now it's a national historic landmark. People visit from all over the world to walk those streets, see the saloons, that courthouse.
Trying to capture a glimpse of that Wild West, right? But it does make you think.
About the romanticizing of it all.
Exactly. Are we just glossing over the rougher parts, the violence? That was a very real part of life back then.
We've talked about the gunfights, the lawlessness. It wasn't all poker games and silver dollars.
Not at all. But I think that's what makes Tombstone so fascinating. It's this study in contrasts. Yeah, there was the violence, the hardship, but there was also this resilience. The people who stayed, they rebuilt after those fires, found new ways to make a living when the silver ran out.
They adapted. They persevered.
Precisely. And that's a story worth telling too, isn't it?
Absolutely. It reminds us that even in the toughest times, even when it seems like everything's stacked against you, there's that human spirit that refuses to give up.
That's Tombstone in a nutshell. It's a place where history comes alive. You walk those streets and you can practically feel the echoes of the past, the good, the bad, and everything in between.
We've talked about the silver, the shootouts, the larger-than-life characters they call Tombstone home, but at the end of the day, it's the stories that stay with you. The stories of the people who lived, loved, lost, and ultimately built a town out of the dust. And as you go about your day, maybe you'll find yourself, like me, wondering, what if I were there? What role would I play in this grand, dusty drama they call Tombstone?